In this video, I'm gonna show you a process that'll help you shoot the best scores you've ever shot in your life without making any complex swing changes. This process works for my students, and I know it's going to work for you. And make sure you watch all the way to the end, because I'm gonna take this simple process, I'm gonna show you how to work on this on the range, even at home, and I'm gonna give you a real life example of how one of my students made this change like that. So let's get to the lesson T and get to work. So what is this magic potion that's gonna get you to play the best golf of your life this year or right now? Well, obviously there isn't any, and thankfully, because I would be out of a job if there was. But the magic is in the dedication. The magic is in the process. The magic is in the discipline. My college baseball coach, who was a very wise and intelligent man, said, dedication and consistency is the path to success. You have to be dedicated and you have to be consistent at what you're working on and what you're doing to be successful. And that didn't pertain just to baseball. It pertains to really everything. And we pull that, and I pull that in my teaching every day with golfers. You have to be dedicated and you have to be consistent at what you do in order to be the best that you can possibly do. And that ties right into the process that I'm going to talk about today. You can't control ultimately where the ball goes. You can't control the wind. You can't control the lie. You can't control those, but you can control your process before you take the club back. And honestly, if you can do that and stay consistent with the process, you're gonna become a way better golfer and potentially shoot some of the best scores of your life. So let's talk about this process. Caddy, my bag, please. Here you go. Good luck. Well, he's not getting a tip today. So my point of that is most players don't have caddies out there. So this process is all about you and your discipline. Caddies on tour or good caddies that you may have playing in a tournament here and there, they will help you out with this process. They will get you to be as consistent as you possibly can, because that's part of their job. But again, if you're not lucky to have a full-time caddy out there, this is all on you. So you have to follow this process the same way every single time. And this is where players struggle in their game. They do not have any consistency to their process. And the process begins when they step into the shot bubble. It's what I call the shot bubble. So what the shot bubble is if you come up with a cart, if you're walking, or if you do have a caddy, once that bag gets put down, once you get out of that cart and walk up to the golf ball, you are stepping into your bubble. Once you step into your bubble, this process has to remain the same no matter what the shot, no matter what the situation. So the first thing we're gonna do, so we are here on the third hole of Whispering Pines. We have 145 yards to the pin. And I'm gonna say right now, stop aiming at pins. 99.99999% of golfers are not good enough to be aiming at most pins. Your objective is to get this ball on the green. Give yourself a chance to have a putt at it, or at least around the green. If you're aiming at pins, I'm telling you, you're making a lot of mistakes because of that. So that's part of this process. We are getting our proper yardages for this shot. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pull out my yardage book, my GPS, on my watch, on my phone, old school yardage book, and I'm gonna get the yardage from this point to the middle of the green and to the back of the green. So let's take a look at that. So if we take a look at this mini map, middle of the green, roughly 159, back of the green, we'll call it 165. So again, 145 is to the pin. That is, in my opinion, a sucker yardage. And I shouldn't even say my opinion. That is a sucker yardage. If you noticed, there's very little room to miss short. And this is why I will stick to this philosophy the rest of my life. And if you are getting something out of this video, consider subscribing or liking this video. My hopes is to use my 25 years of experience, knowledge, and passion for this game to help you become a better player. and overall just enjoy this game a lot more. If you want to learn a little bit more about me, I have a bio down in the description below. Let's get back to that tee. So we've established that the back of the green is 165. So that's the number, that's my top end number. Middle of the green, we'll call it 155. Again, we are not ever trying to go after this pin, and I don't care what skill set you are. Now the next thing is, take a look at the lie. We are on a par 3, we are on a tee box, so hopefully the lie is good, plus you get to use a tee. If I am in the fairway, if I am in the rough, that is my next step. I'm gonna look at the lie. I'm gonna assess how the lie is going to affect the golf shot out there, whether it's gonna take yardage off, potentially add a little yardage if it's a flyer lie. The slope, is it above my feet, is it below my feet? All of those things, while I'm in the bubble, I have to assess. I have to have that as part of my process. I see it a lot when I do on-course instruction. Players skip over that. They just look at the yardage and they don't take into account the lie, and the lie is gonna have a massive influence on ultimately how well they hit it and how far it goes. But we are on a par 3, so the lie is good. So I am gonna take my 7-iron. Top end 7-iron is 165. If I go long, I'm okay here. If I come up a little short of my top end, I'm in the middle of the green. So this is the next step of the process. We have to establish an intermediate target. And I'm sure a lot of you have heard this before, but what an intermediate target is something that is a foot and a half, really no more than that, because then it starts to defeat the purpose, in front of the golf ball. A mark. You want to find a mark, a divot, a brown spot, something. You will find something. I am going to cheat today, and I am going to put something on the ground about a foot in front of the golf ball. Now, what I'm using that as a starting point for my alignment. I hit the golf ball relatively straight on average. I can draw the golf ball, I can fade the golf ball, but on average, if I hit 100 shots, my net average is gonna be somewhere in the middle. So just by chance, this pin is equidistant left and right on this green. I'm actually gonna use the pin as my target line, not my yardage. Don't mix those up. I'm gonna use it as my target line. Now, if the pin was left, if the pin was right, this becomes more challenging because subconsciously, we always wanna look back at that pin no matter where it is. So in that case, what I do is I like to choose a tree in the distance. I like to pick out something that I can focus on. And then I draw a line back to the ball, find that intermediate target, and from here, I'm gonna walk into the shot. I'm gonna point my club face at the intermediate target, start with my feet together, establish my stance. I right now am ready to go. Now in my swing, I have a little pre-swing waggle that I do. This is where your mileage will vary here. Some players take practice swings, some players take waggles. All those things are fine. As long as those pieces are an integral part of getting you to hit the golf ball the best you can, don't just do it to do it. But if it is an integral part, absolutely. If you take a practice swing back here, take a practice swing back here. If you take it over here, great. If you waggle over here, great. But do that after you've established your intermediate target, and then after you go through the waggle, the practice swing, that's when you're gonna go in, club face, at the intermediate target, build the stance, waggle, you give one last look at where you want the golf ball to go, and you make a swing. Be good. And I executed everything that I was trying to execute there. That process, albeit when I talk about it, it's a little more drawn out. That process needs to be done every single time you step up to the golf shot. I have witnessed it over and over again in my 25 years of teaching. Players may do that for a couple shots and then they skip it. They just get up and hit the ball, or they get up and take a lot longer. You need to have the same pace. You need to have the same intentions. You have to be super consistent before you hit every single golf shot. And I promise you, if you follow this process every single time, don't complicate it. Keep it simple like this, but you're checking off all of those decision-making boxes beforehand, you will be very confident in the choice of club that you're gonna hit. You'll be very confident ultimately in your target line, which ultimately will lead to a much more confident golf swing because you're prepared to hit that golf shot. This process, it's a non-negotiable. Obviously, there's a lot of variance from player to player, within this process, but once you step in that bubble, you're in that shot bubble. You have to go through this process the same way every time. I don't care if you're in the woods. I don't care if you're on the tee box. I don't care where you are. This process, the consistency of this process is gonna help you shoot really, really good scores relative to your ability. So what I'm gonna do now is just talk about how you can do this on the range, practice this, and even practice this at home. And then I'm just gonna pop back over to the office over there, and I'm just gonna show you a before and after when I recently just practiced this, what I'm gonna talk about now with one of my students, and how tight his dispersion got. It's pretty crazy. It's not gonna happen this way with everybody, but it was pretty crazy once I changed his mindset just a little bit. All right, so we've established this process, this routine. You're stepping into the bubble. Every shot is different. Now, when you get on the practice range, it's the same shot every single time for the most part. The same lie, it's the same visual. It can get very vanilla very quickly. And what I see a lot of players do is they get into the swing and rake, swing and rake. Does that sound familiar out there? What I wanna make sure you are incorporating practicing this process. If you're working on a specific thing in the swing, say you're working on your backswing and you're just focusing on your backswing. Hit 5, 6 balls while you're in training mode. Work on your backswing, for example. But you can't worry about where the ball goes when you're in training mode. You can't, and a lot of people do. Not to go off on this little tangent, a lot of players, when they're working on something, they're still worrying about the outcome. When you're working on something, your brain is focused on one specific thing, not the whole package. Think of a shortstop in baseball. Say they're working on their arm path. Now, if they're taking ground balls and they're working on their arm path, they're not focused on where the golf or the baseball is going to be thrown. They're focused on the arm path. I guarantee you the dispersion of throws to first base going to be pretty wide. Now, if they're focusing in on executing the throw, not how to execute the throw, but letting the throw happen, guarantee you that dispersion gets tighter. So this is where I'm going with this. So again, if you are working on something, work on something. Great. Don't worry about where the ball goes. That's why I really love it when people practice into a net. I know you can feel where the ball goes, potentially, but you don't see where the ball goes. So it gets you ultimately to focus a little bit more on the movement patterns as opposed to the outcome. Okay, so you hit 5 balls where you're focusing on your movement pattern. The next 5 balls, you step into that shot bubble. You're gonna go through and practice that process. You're gonna practice looking at the lie. You're gonna practice picking out a target. You're gonna practice, taking into account a certain yardage. And then you're gonna go through that routine. You're gonna do that 5 times, 6 times, 7 times. And then once you do that, you can go back to training mode and work on whatever it is that you're working on. You always have to practice how you play. The discipline and the dedication to that is going to help you significantly shoot better scores, I promise you. And you can do the same thing at home, obviously not hitting the golf shot, but practice the process. Sit in the living room, pretend you have a certain lie, pretend you have a certain distance, you have the right club, walk in, find an intermediate target on the carpet, go through your routine. The more you do this, it's not sexy, it's not, but the more you do this, the more you're gonna do it on the golf course. You can't get on the golf course and do this half the time. And that's what we see. I see it a lot when people get tired, like physically or mentally tired. They'll start to skip part of the process. You can't. You have to be disciplined. Your outcome will be much better, even if you're physically or mentally tired, if you stick to this process and you stick to this routine. 25 years of doing this, I witness this mistake all the time. And when I can get that player to follow the process, things change, and things change quickly. So let's hop back to the desk. I'm gonna quickly show you the before and after when we made this little change in his practice routine and how it affected his dispersion. So as you know, I like to use my students as examples, as real life examples, not just anecdotal conversations. So this particular student, and I did this to him unknowingly, because I didn't want to lead him in any direction mentally. So I had him on the golf course. We were in the sim here. So again, the lie was the same. So just kind of keep that in mind. So I put him in different situations every shot, but the shot was a 145-yard shot to the middle of the green. And I would jump around on the golf course and place the ball in the fairway or on the tee box in the rough 145 yards out. I did not want him to have the same shot twice, the same visual twice. I wanted different scenarios like water on the right, bunker on the left, so on and so forth, just like we see in real life. And you'll notice I had him hit 8 shots first before I stopped him and then went over the process. So if you take a look at the dispersion graph over here, it's pretty wide in general. Now, for context, this player is an 8 handicap, so he's a pretty darn good player to begin with. And the dispersion was pretty wide. I believe he was hitting his 7-iron. It was a 7-iron. So dispersion is pretty wide. I stopped him. We talked about this process that we just went over on the lesson tee over there, and I made him go through the process every single time. I also stopped him when he missed a piece of the process too. So I was helping him and coaching him along the way. Look at the difference. What is wild here is, so he hits a little fade. And what is wild here is you'll notice everything is very consistent, slightly to the right. So we talked about ultimately, we learned something from it, talked about ultimately maybe changing our starting line a little bit to the left or moving our intermediate target in front of us a little bit to the left to get that ball to fall on the target line a little bit more. But you'll notice it's super consistent. Distance, super consistent. And remember, this is from different scenarios and different spots on the golf course. Same yardage, but different visuals, different lies, different everything. So he didn't get into a groove and do this. He had to think through every single shot. Yes, it was the same yardage, but rough is going to influence yardage as well. Slopes are going to influence yardage. He had to think about that stuff. And I know if you follow this plan every single shot on the golf course, and you have to practice it on the range, you will shoot the best scores of your life, whatever that may be. Go to the range, sit in the living room right now, work on this, let me know how it goes, and I'll see you in the next video.